Hey everyone, I wanted to dive into my story a little bit deeper than what's on the website. I got sober when I was 20 years old. I was knocking on death's door from drugs and alcohol. I am definitely an alcoholic. I used a lot of drugs trying to control my drinking. But I've got almost 27 years of continuous sobriety. My sober date is February 8th, 1999. I've got a sponsor today. I've got sponsees. I go to several meetings still during the week, and I'm definitely active in the program. Daily recovery principles, all of the stuff. I've got a meeting this coming weekend that I'm just a regular attendee at, and call it a committed meeting, and I'm bringing food for their anniversary dinner. So I'm definitely still living this program as much as I can because I exhausted every other way to stop drinking, and this is the only way to work. Um, Getting involved in the community was really what saved me, as well as the steps and sponsor and all that kind of stuff, trying to work through the stuff rolling around in my head that made me drink. Uh, but being involved in the community and surrounding myself with other people like me, other people that thought like me, other people that felt like me, and that drank like me, that's what now keeps me sober. So, in a general way, what it was like, what happened, what it's like today. Well, let's get to it. I grew up in a great household. I mean, everyone looking in would say that I had a great upbringing. I was kind of a upper middle class family. I went to a private school. I had the same friends or the same classmates for 13 years. Um, Parents never got divorced. There was never really any super upheavals in the house. There was no fighting. Cops were never called. I, I played sports. I have a sister who's 2 or 3 years younger than I am. There's no outwardly reason why I became an alcoholic. I mean, there are plenty of people in the rooms. I had a horrible upbringing. Well, it could be a reason. Well, you got a great upbringing. Well, why did you drink? It all started with the way I felt. And that's really why drinking took off for me, because it changed the way I felt, because I hated the way I felt. So ever since I was a kid, I can always remember just not feeling right in my own skin. I just feel awkward. Uh, at a young age, I got glasses, and I think I was 5 years old. So now I'm walking around. Not only am I feeling awkward, I'm now feel like I'm looking awkward too, and so that added to it. And I grew up in the '80s, so the '80s were kind of weird with fashion. So I'm walking around in odd clothing, big Coke bottle glasses, socks halfway up to your knee with nice little big fat stripes on them. I was an awkward looking thing. I was also a little pudgy. Got to throw that in there. So all these things made me feel different, even though all the other kids looked the same. We all talked the same, had the same kind of upbringing, same everything. I just felt different. I felt like I didn't fit in. I felt like I had to force myself to figure out how do I communicate with other kids. I just didn't feel right in my own skin. It's just the best way to put it. Um, I tried to act differently or to think differently, and it just didn't work. I didn't really know that I felt that way or that that's what was going on. I know that now, but at some point, I'd say 14ish, 13ish is probably when I had my first real drunk. I know I had a sip of beer or two with my dad fishing, like the good luck first early in the morning, good luck beer here, son, have a sip of beer. And it never tasted that good. It never did anything for me, never did anything to me. Um, but when I was 13, 14 years old, it's a little fuzzy because it was a long time ago, um, I had an experience that was life altering. And that committee in my head that kept going on saying you're different, or people are talking about you and behind your back or off in the corner, those noises stopped. And I was with a group of guys. We were in someone's converted garage into an apartment. We had a ton of beer. We had a bunch of Boone's Farm. We had a bunch of, I think Zima had just come out then, so we had a bunch of Zimas. Um, and I got trashed. I threw up. But something happened that night where the committee in my head stopped. I felt a part of, and these 4 other guys, who I still know most of them today, um, I felt like I belonged. I felt like I had a pact with these guys that, whatever was rolling around in my head, but that day felt different. The committee quieted, the hamster wheel stopped turning. I was able to enjoy where I was at the time. I was able to laugh without feeling like I was looking awkward or being judged. And that's the feeling that I chased until I stopped drinking. That ease and comfort of taking that first drink, all that weight off my shoulders, all that anxiety disappeared. And that was the first time that I realized I was carrying around all that anxiety and all of that fear. I didn't know it then. Couldn't have told you that's what it was either then. But that's what I chased from then on. That was the only way I felt okay in my skin. It was the only way I felt like I'd approach a group of guys that I knew, but I didn't feel comfortable approaching. I could approach girls. I could approach anything. I didn't have to have fear. It was great, and it worked for a very long time, or what I feel like was a very long time. So I got sober at 20. It wasn't as long as some others, but that feeling is what I chased. So at that age, you can't drink but so much because you can't get it. Back then, it was easier to find alcohol because my parents had it. It wasn't easier to find drugs. It was easier to find the alcohol because everyone had it at that age. Getting a little older, it was easier to find both just because you get a fake ID and you get exposed to some more areas of town that you're not supposed to be in. And you can find anything you want. But my drinking really was on the weekends as much as I could. Wasn't doing it much during the week. But when I got my driver's license, that kind of changed. So at 16, I was able to, go out to friends' houses when I wanted to. I had my own, hiding places in the trunk so I could go off somewhere and drink or just steal liquor from my parents' house. When I was around 16, that's kind of when I started with drugs as well. Most of them were, just kind of, it was to maintain, friendships or whatever. I really wasn't dependent on the drugs. I was using some drugs to alter the effects of alcohol. I was taking some pills to increase the effect. I was, smoking a lot of marijuana to, kind of even yourself out. Some cocaine in my story that helps you drink more and longer. So I was really using the drugs to manage my drinking. But towards the end of my high school, I was dealing some of those things, and I got caught. My parents, luckily, were able to get a lawyer, and it just disappeared. I was doing some things on school grounds that you're not supposed to do on school grounds, and they don't like that kind of stuff. So luckily, that consequence never happened. I never got pulled over for a DUI. I did drink and drive almost every day for the last year or so of high school. I always used cruise control to keep myself like 3 miles above the speed limit. So that was my way of trying to control the situation, make sure I didn't get pulled over. I was, it was a lot of fun. I really didn't have any consequences in school. I did well, got into a good college. But college is where my drinking changed. I went to a school 1,300 miles away, no more parents. My parents were really the last piece of control that was out there, barrier to me drinking the way I wanted to drink. That was my parents. I didn't want them to find out and them to cut off my drinking or my access to drinking. So I kept it under wraps as best I could around them. Going off to college, there was no parents. There was no more barriers to drinking the way I wanted to drink. And I thought I could control it and drink the way I wanted to drink and go to school. I was wrong. Plain and simple, I was wrong. That first semester, I started off with 5 classes. I had to drop 2 of them because I was failing immediately because I couldn't show up to school. Just couldn't show up. If you can't show up, then you're obviously going to fail out. But I didn't know that. But I did take the withdrawal versus the F. So started off 5 classes, ended up with 3, and I still had like a D average in all those 3 classes. I didn't have to go to work. All I had to do was go to class, and I couldn't show up. Every day I'd wake up and say, oh, I got to go to class today. So I got to, take notes. I got a test coming up, or whatever. I couldn't show up. And if I did show up, I wasn't taking notes. I was too hungover to think or to hear or to take notes. I wasn't doing any homework, so I wasn't practicing anything. I'd show up for a test sometimes, and I'd fail. Go figure. I mean, the delusional stuff in my head was like, I'm in class, I'm going here, and I'm doing fine. But that report card comes out, and you realize you're not doing fine, and that's that bubble of insanity, or that bubble of delusion gets popped, and you're like, oh God, what do I do? So my parents are footing the bill for the whole thing, so they were definitely not happy when I came home for Christmas break. I worked for my father during almost all breaks during school, high school, summer times, and I was able to show up. I did have to call out a couple times because I was too drunk the night before to go to work. I didn't think about that kind of stuff. Those are consequences. How often did you not go to work because you got drunk? I'd like to say I always showed up to work, but the truth is I didn't. And sometimes when I did show up to work when I was still drunk, that's not showing up to work. You're still drunk, or I'm still drunk. I'm not giving all to the company that I was working for. I was recovering up until about noon. And that's more or less, stealing money from your employer just to maintain a job. But so I got through that semester, came home, took a break from the drugs, just drank, and drank a lot. So went back to school, took about a month for me to realize that things are not going well. I really was not going to school. I was not participating. I was failing out again next semester. I had to add those 3 classes that I dropped before, and 1 or 2 of them that I'd gotten a D in. Had to add them back in. Still taking 2 or 3 of those things out for withdrawals because I couldn't show up to work, to school, and I'm failing out of those 2 classes again. And by this time I'm trying to find a way out of this. Like, I know my world is crumbling. I can see it crumbling. I'm waking up in the morning. I got to go to school. I got to go to work. I got to do the work. I can't drink today. I mean, every day. I know this is a problem. I can feel it, but I don't know what to do. So what did I do is I crafted a plan, my plans and designs. This is my way out. I'm going to admit that I have a drug and alcohol problem to my parents. They're going to put me in rehab because they have the resources to do that. I get to save some face because I have a problem. And I'll be able to clean up a little bit and then go back to school and start fresh again. See if this will be the thing that triggers a reset in my life. And that's what I did. So I called my parents, said I have a problem. It was not fun. It was not pleasant, but that was part of the plan. And I went to rehab, went to a lovely place in Minnesota in the springtime. It is cold up there. It's cold up there right now. When I'm making this video, it's about -5 up there right now. So it is cold. It did exactly what it was supposed to do. It dried me out. It gave me a bunch of information, and it gave me a plan of action for when I left. That's all they're responsible for. That's all they need to do. They don't need to do anything else. They're not supposed to there to keep me sober for the rest of my life. They're there to give me the best head start they can so I can try to stay sober out there instead of in there. So I went, I gathered all the information I could. I got clean. I felt better. I'm 6 foot tall. I'm supposed to be 175 pounds right now, 180, something like that. I was about 140. I was skin and bone when I went to rehab. They fattened me up, gave me a bunch of information, and said, you can go back to school. I said, great, thanks. A lot of other people were going to halfway houses in Florida, next to the beach. I went back to Texas in the heat and go back to school. That was part of the plan, but looking back on it, I'm not sure how my life would look like if I'd actually gone to a halfway house and continued to try to stay sober the way everyone else did. So I got out, and I I became what I like to call one of the most dangerous alcoholics. I'm an informed alcoholic now. I have information given to me by professionals in a rehab center on what my alcoholism is, how it affects me. And now I can try to convince you that I'm not an alcoholic because I can talk the lingo. I can convince you that I'm not an alcoholic. So you'll get off my back and I can keep drinking the way I want to drink. That's dangerous. That's what kills people. And it almost killed me. That's why I say that. It almost killed me. I was convincing myself just as much as I was trying to convince you that I wasn't an alcoholic, because I had a bunch of drugs and everyone else loves to drink and I'm 20 years old, and what 20-year-old doesn't drink? Everything I could do to protect my drinking, I was trying to do. So I went back to school in the summertime, took 2 classes, one class for like 3 weeks every day, and I took another class for 3 weeks every day, and I did great. I think I got a B or something like that, pretty solid grade for an alcoholic. So I did great. I proved that I could go back to school. So I came home for about a month, maybe 2 or 3 weeks, something like that, and then went back to school full time for the next semester. And during the summertime, I met a girl, had a relationship, and she introduced me to a bunch of fraternity guys that were new to me. I was already there looking at another fraternity with another bunch of guys, but none of them were there for summertime. But these group of guys were there for the summertime, and I met back up with them in the fall. And what I saw, this is the alkalogic of my thinking. I saw a bunch of fraternity guys drinking the way I like to drink, going to class, graduating, having fun. So what did this alcoholic do? I joined a fraternity to try to control my drinking. How dumb is that? That's dumb. But that's the delusion I lived in. That's how I convinced myself that joining a fraternity was going to be good for me. They went to class. They drank like I did. They graduated. That's all I saw. That's it. I'm still amazed and kind of ashamed when I say that to y'all, but that's what happened. That was my thinking. So joined a fraternity in the fall and went through Rush, and while I'm going through that process, my drinking is getting worse. And I'm drinking with different fraternity guys on different days to make sure none of them know that I'm drinking every day. Then I'm basically getting drunk and almost a fall down drunk every single day. I wanted to hide it because I knew if they found out, they might kick me out or not let me in, because I was rushing then. They wouldn't let me in. And then what would I have? Where would I go? What would I do? Who would I drink with? It was awful. So I'm guessing sometime around September or so, I've already failed out of school once, basically. I got a medical withdrawal to go to rehab, but I failed out. Let's just call it what it is. And now I feel like I'm a 2-time failure again. I went back. I'm failing at the same institution, failing the same classes. This thought of trying to control my drinking by joining fraternity is failing as well. And I don't know what to do. I don't know what other plan there is for me to get out of this mess that I'm in. And that's when I really started contemplating suicide. For months, every day, for months, for the end of my drinking, the last 3 or 4 or 5 months of drinking, I thought about killing myself every day. That was the only way out. The only way that I wouldn't have any shame or guilt or have to worry about the pain of admitting failure or having my parents say you're a failure, or kicking me out of the house, whatever. And I didn't know what else to do. I had tried not drinking. I had tried drinking only a little bit. I had tried laying off the gin, because I love the gin on the end. I tried to stop drinking the gin, just drink beer. I mean, beer gets you bloated. Gin gets you there faster. I don't know why you do that. At that time I was back into drugs. So what kind of drugs could I take to slow down my drinking? So that I would try to go to class. So I would try to do what I think I'm supposed to do. And none of it worked. None of it. I lost the girlfriend because I chose the fraternity over the girlfriend who introduced me to the fraternity. I'm incapable of having a relationship for any reason, basically, with anyone, intimate or otherwise, um, just because I can't show up. I don't add anything to the relationship. I'm taking as much as I can take because I'm in pain and I don't know what else to do other than to take something to alleviate that pain, whether it's physical from a relationship or it's mental just from being around other people that think like I do, like the fraternity, or I'm taking your stuff to physically make me feel different, like drugs or alcohol. So the last several months of my drinking were full of thoughts of suicide, failing out of school again, waking up pretty much every day shaking and sweating from withdrawals of alcohol every day. Had another Christmas break, worked a little bit more for my father again laid off the drugs, just had the drinking, so I had kind of severed all my drug ties back home and just drank with old high school buddies and that kind of stuff when everyone's home for break. Went back to school for about a week and a half in January, maybe 2 weeks, something like that. We'll call it the end of January. The last week of my drinking was really full of all the stuff I'd learned in rehab coming true. At some point, alcohol will stop working. It'll stop doing for you what it was doing for you. And what it was doing for me was drowning out the pain of a life lived on drinking. I mean, I drank to drown out the feelings of fear, the feelings of anxiety, the feelings of being different or not fitting in, you name it. I drank to change the way I felt. And it stopped working. And what that looks like in my life, when alcohol stopped working, 2 separate events in that last week sum it up. At one point, I was at the fraternity house and I had a case of beer and I was watching a bunch of football. I drank the case of beer and I couldn't get drunk. The day or so after or before, I don't know which one came first, I'm sitting at Dan's apartment. Dan's a fraternity brother. I'm sitting there with a 6-pack of some nonsense. I don't know what it was, some craft beer that I was going to drink before I got into the gym. I wanted something to taste different. I drank 3 beers and I threw up all over myself. I was trashed. Alcohol, and my body started to reject alcohol. I drank 24 beers, couldn't get drunk. Next time I drank, or the time before, it was like 3 beers and I got drunk. My body didn't know what to do with it. Absolutely no clue. And those 2 instances that week scared me. I didn't know what to do, especially the one with 3 beers and I got trashed. That's the one that really scared me. The one drinking too much and not getting drunk. I had kind of had some of that before, but the 3 beers and getting trashed, that scared me. Because at that point, I'm still having daily thoughts of suicide. I know I'm failing out of school. The fraternity is starting to understand how bad off I am. My life is crumbling again. I can't pull that I want to go to rehab because I have a problem card again, because I know it's not really going to work. My parents may have done it, but that wasn't going to be the solution. The solution was going to kill I was going to kill myself. And, the level of thought process I had in that was, I was thinking of every different way to do it. I mean, I was going to be a good alcoholic and a good suicide. I'm one of those planners, so I'm trying to think out, what is the best way to do this? Because it's really the only way out I know of. And the only way I could think of that would be foolproof is to eat a shotgun. You're not going to piece your brain back together. Someone might put the fire out if you set yourself on fire. Someone might, pull you out the pool if you try and drown yourself. The rope might break, or someone might come in while you try and hang yourself. The airbag's going to go off if you drive off the beaten path into a ravine or something like that. I had all those thoughts and think that those are not rational thoughts from a rational human. I didn't know that. I wasn't thinking that are these good or bad thoughts. I was just thinking that I have a problem I can't get out. Suicide's a good idea. I can't explain how I feel about that now, knowing that's the way I used to think. I see it in sponsees today. And I know where you're coming from. I can feel it. I used to think that way. I don't think that way today. That's what I tell them. But you got to do some work. So I took it as far as one day during that final semester or final couple weeks of school, I figured that I needed to have that shotgun. If that was my plan, I needed to have it. So I went around town, driving around where I thought this gun shop or pawn shop was on this road where I was in school. I drove up and down the street for like 20 minutes. Couldn't find it. No clue. I don't know why. I knew it was there, just couldn't find it. So, roll around the clock. It's beer 30 somewhere. Went back to the fraternity house and got drunk. But I actually went out to go find that shotgun that I was going to use when the time was right. So fast forward, I had that 1 week period where alcohol ceased working. My body started rejecting it. I'm waking up every morning, throwing up, crawling to the bathroom, sometimes not in that order. I'm pretty sure I was wetting the bed on the regular. Knock on wood, I haven't wet the bed since I stopped drinking, which is a good thing, but I was shaking, sweating until I got some sugar in me or I got drunk again. I would crawl to the bathroom, throw up, put my contacts in every morning and pray and tell myself that I'm not going to do this again today. And by 12 o'clock or 1 or whatever, I'd say, I have to drink. I got to go drink because I don't know what else to do. It's too painful living this life. I have to drink. But I didn't know any other way to live. Like I couldn't really envision my life drinking, continuing to drink, and I couldn't really envision my life not drinking either. I mean, I was in a rough spot. So I believe it was, we'll call it a Thursday. So I got sober on my sobriety date's a Monday. I came home on the Sunday, and the following day is my sobriety date. So sometime around the Thursday or so is when I got up just like every other morning. I'm shaking and sweating. I crawled to the bathroom, threw up in the toilet, stood up and looked in the mirror, put my contacts in, and I don't recognize who's in the mirror. I guess I know today that my higher power let me see what was going on. It sunk in. That connection between what I saw and what I thought connected to my heart. And that's the difference in any other time I tried to get sober. I said a quick prayer, and it was nothing more than, God, please help me. There was no conditions. There was no anything other than an honest and heartfelt desire to not keep doing what I was doing. At that time, I didn't want to just not drink or stop drinking. I just wanted to feel better. I wanted to not kill myself. I wanted to not think about killing myself. I didn't really know what that looked like or what that meant, what my life would look like now, but I just didn't want to have pain anymore. And right after that, I made the decision I was going to call my parents and fess up to what was going on. Not really going to school, failing out. Oh, by the way, I told you I've been sober the entire time. That's not right. I'm drinking and drugging worse than I was before. I think I need to come home. And they asked me, do you think you need to go back to rehab? And I said, no, I don't think so. But I think I need to go back to the 12-step program that I was in before and see if that can help. And that's what I did. So that was a Thursday. I did use and drink between Thursday and Sunday because if I didn't, I probably would have had to go to the hospital. I was physically dependent on everything I was on at that time. So I just kind of, it wasn't fun, but I just kind of slowly weaned myself off. I kept a little bit in my system just to make sure I wouldn't go into DTs or, have any other kind of adverse reaction of not doing something, not putting something in my body. And Sunday, I'm sitting on the curb at 3 o'clock in the morning waiting for a cab, and I threw my last little pipe and a little bit of weed that I had and threw it down the waste pipe, a little drain down below where I was sitting on. Hopped on a plane. I didn't even take half my shit with me, my stuff with me. And I went home, tail tucked between my legs, failed out of the same school twice, failed all those classes again. I feel like I failed all my fraternity brothers that were there for no other reason than to help and to be there for me. I failed them. I just felt like an utter failure. And so that was a Sunday. Monday is February 8th. And I believe I went to a meeting that day. I think I did. That whole first few months are kind of fuzzy for me. But I did try and do 90 and 90 and that kind of stuff. I fell face forward into AA or 12-step program. I didn't have anything else going on. Like, really wasn't employable. I could work for my father if I wanted to, but I think the first 2 or 3 weeks I just kind of wasn't really employable because I couldn't stop shaking, and I really was just kind of, I don't know if they didn't know what was going to go on with me, but I went to a meeting pretty much every day. Got a sponsor that first week. Mind you, I'm 20 years old. The guy that I picked as my sponsor, I saw at my first or second meeting, and he was sharing that he was 30 years old. He had 10 years of sobriety, so he got sober when he was 20. And he was married. He looked like he had all his stuff together. He had a job. He worked for himself. He had a job, and he was happy. And he talked the way I felt. So I clung to him, like, please help me. I did ask him to be my sponsor. If you want to figure out how to ask someone to be your sponsor, you walk up to them and say, will you be my sponsor? That's it. It's that simple. So we started working some steps. I've tried everything before to try to stay sober on my own, changing drinking, change my playmates and my playthings, go to rehab, dry out, whatever. None of it worked. 12-step program worked. I did work it. I did everything that was asked of me, from service work to opening meetings, making coffee. That time everyone smoked in meetings. I was cleaning up ashtrays. We started going through the book, started taking some steps, and lo and behold, I've got 90 days clean. Every day looked pretty much like this. Got up, went to work, went to a meeting, went to dinner. Somewhere in there I went to the gym. Sometimes it was between work and a meeting. Sometimes it was after the meeting. Then I went to bed. I could handle those 5 things, and that's about it. But it kept me busy. The days I didn't work, I'd try to fill out, an extra meeting or two. I might go to a noon meeting or something like that, but try to keep my body busy and out of my own head. If my feet were moving, I wasn't thinking. If I wasn't moving and I was just laying around doing nothing on my days off, that's when I'd get into my head and I'd start thinking some weird stuff like, it wasn't that bad, was it? But you should keep not drinking for a little while. But it wasn't that bad. That little whisper of the alcoholism will come back. But I'd say for the at least that first year, I pretty much went to a meeting every day. And I'm 20 years old. I'm thinking that life is over. There's nothing left for me. And sitting in a room, a meeting with, 45-year-old to 55-year-old people, they're all crusty, and my life is over. I'm never going to have any fun again. And I'm sitting here now at 47. I'm talking about me, old crusty people. But luckily, I found some people that were my age. There wasn't a whole lot of us back then, but there was a small community of young people in AA. And that was trying to get sober, trying to stay sober, trying to not do the dumb stuff we were doing, and trying to help others. That's what life looked like. I have more friends now, and even then, I had more friends then in the program in recovery than not. I tried to keep some of those relationships up that I had in the past. And not that they're bad people. they're good people. I still know some of them today. I still have relationships with some of them today. But we're just trying to live different lives. I need to stay sober, and I need to help other people try to stay sober from my experience. And that's just not what they're doing. I mean, some of them are, volunteering at different places. They're, having parties at each other's houses, which, alcohol, that's their right, and that's what they do. That's just not me. It's just not what, I can't do that today. It was difficult in the beginning to realize that that's okay, and that, I'm not missing out on the party. I've got a blog post about, FOMO, fear of missing out. A lot of my fears in the beginning was, what am I missing? What's going on that I'm not a part of? What are all my old friends doing that I should be doing because it looks like they're having a good time? I used to have a good time. And when I think about it, the good time that I was having was getting absolutely trashed, ruining someone's time or relationship. And ultimately, it ended up me wanting to put a shotgun in my mouth. That's what that looks like. That's what fun looked like for me, because I can't control my drinking. I lost the ability to control my drinking at some point. I don't know when. Doesn't really matter. But I've proven to myself that I can't control my drinking. I say that the great obsession of every alcoholic is trying to enjoy and control his drinking. Well, every time I tried to control it, I couldn't enjoy it. And every time I tried to enjoy it, I was out of control. So there's no way I can control and enjoy my drinking anymore, because I've proven that to myself. Next several years, I've got what my sobriety looks like, or looked like in early sobriety, was a lot of meetings, a lot of sponsees, a lot of step work. Somewhere in my mid to late 20s, I started dating a lady. I got married in sobriety, ended up getting, having a child in sobriety, ended up getting divorced from that lady in sobriety, ended up trying to navigate, divorced and split custody and dating again in sobriety, getting married again in sobriety. And, along that way, I've been to weddings and parties and fun times. I've been to funerals for people in the program. I've been to where they didn't make it, or they died sober. I've been to funerals for family members. I've buried both my grandparents. My father passed away in 2008 from lung cancer that had metastasized from his brainstem down to his liver and his lower back. It was everywhere. When they found it, it was pretty much too late. And 6 weeks later, we buried him. What does that look like? I'm 29 years old and lost my dad. Got mom. I've dealt with mom. My mother fell into her own bottle right after that. She had been drinking and had her own struggles before he passed away, but when he passed away, that was her last barrier to drinking the way she wanted to. And boy, did she. And I've spent since 2008 picking up those pieces, and I've got a lot of experience in helping her out. I'm now her guardian. In 2018, dementia popped up in her life, and I've had to step up. And no matter what my feelings are towards the way she treated my sister and I when we were in high school, because of her own drinking, or because of her drinking after my father passed away, I've had to put all that stuff aside and help her, because no one else is here to help her. My sister moved off to somewhere else, and I'm the only one she's got to help her. And I get to do that today. I don't have to do that today. The program I work today allows me to have that distinction between I have to do this, or I get to do this. I get to be available for her, no matter what I think, feel, or believe. That's kind of what's currently going on. Assisted living and that kind of stuff today. A lot of different experiences with that. My divorce from my first wife was ugly. very ugly, very long, and it has not been a very fun relationship since then, but I've had a lot of work with sponsors and trying to figure out what I bring to the table, how I started the ball rolling in that relationship, and my discomfort in interactions with that other person. And it's been eye-opening. And today, she hasn't changed. I've changed. My expectations of the whole situation have changed, and that's how I deal with that. But today, so I'm 26 years sober. February 8th, I will be 27 years sober. And I still go to 3 to 4 meetings a week. I still have sponsees. I still have a sponsor. That person knows he's my sponsor. My sponsees know I'm their sponsor because we keep in contact. And I try to practice the 10th, 11th, and 12th step of my life on a daily basis. Try to watch where I show up, where my character defects are possibly driving my actions on a daily basis. Reviewing my conduct at the end of the day, making sure in the morning that there's nothing I need to correct that day from my evening review, and being as helpful as I can to other people. That 12th step, specifically helping other alcoholics, but just being generally a good human. I'm here to be of maximum service to my higher power and the people around me. Not just alcoholics, but that is my primary purpose, to help alcoholics, but to be of maximum service to everyone. That does have limits. We do learn that there are some boundaries to time and mental capacity of the stuff that we have to deal with on a daily basis. The mindset is to be of service. That's the attitude, that shift in perception and attitude that happens when we take the steps, when we clean up our past, and we try to watch where we show up on a daily basis and correct current transgressions. So now a 4th step is cleaning up the past, or at least writing down all the stuff we did in the past. And 10th step is cleaning up our current, our present, when we have screwed up today. I got plenty of I've screwed up today, but I deal with it today or tomorrow. I don't let it turn into a resentment where I have to do a giant house cleaning on a bunch of stuff that I should have taken care of when it happened. But that is my story in a long fashion. Hopefully some of this resonated with y'all. Please check out my website, hailersmith.com. I've got a blog where I've got a bunch of posts about different topics. I try to push out a new blog post every Sunday. I'm going to be making more videos like this, deep diving into some of those blog posts. Please come take a look. Please watch them and leave a comment. If you like them, great. Wish y'all well in your sobriety journey, and hopefully I can help. Thank you.